Have you ever really, truly stopped to think about how you experience the world? I mean, it feels simple, right? It feels like we're just looking out of our eyes, like they're windows, and we're seeing reality exactly as it is. But what if that's not what's happening at all? What if I told you that everything you see, everything you hear, everything you feel isn't a direct recording of the world, but is actually a story, a controlled hallucination that's happening inside the darkness of your own skull? Yeah, let's get into this. So, this is the big, kind of mind bending idea we're going to unpack. The world isn't something you just passively observe, it's something your brain is actively, constantly creating. It's generating a model of the world based on its best guesses, on its predictions, and that model is your reality. You never ever experience the world directly. It's a powerful thought, and honestly, a little bit spooky. Okay, let's put your brain to the test right now. It's a simple question, and I just want you to trust your gut. Look at this checkerboard. Which tile is darker, A or B? The answer probably seems completely obvious, right? Go on, lock in your answer. And here we go. They are the exact same color. I mean, physically, pixel for pixel, identical. So what on earth is going on? Well, your brain, using a lifetime of experience with how light and shadow work, predicts that a square sitting in a shadow must actually be lighter than it appears to your eye. So it corrects the raw data, and you perceive B as being much lighter. Your brain's prediction literally overrides reality. You see, that wasn't just some quirky party trick. It's a deep insight into how you perceive everything all the time. So let's dig into the evidence for this wild idea that your everyday reality is, in a very real sense, a kind of controlled hallucination. So, why does the brain even operate this way? Well, because it has to. The truth is, our senses are shockingly limited. Of all the light in the entire electromagnetic spectrum, our eyes can only perceive this tiny, tiny fraction, less than 1/10 trillionth of it. We are functionally blind to almost everything that's out there. So to make any sense of the world, our brain has no choice but to guess, to fill in an incredible amount of missing information. And even within that tiny sliver of reality we can technically see, our brains are constantly editing things out. You've probably heard of the famous invisible gorilla experiment. People were told to count how many times a basketball was passed. Because their attention was so focused on that one task, half of them, completely missed a man in a full gorilla suit who walked right to the center of the screen, beat his chest, and then walked off. It was right there in plain sight, but their brains just edited it out of their reality. But what happens when the senses go offline completely? This is where it gets really strange. The neuroscientist Todd Feinberg had a patient, a woman named Lizzie, who went blind because of a stroke. But here's the thing, her brain didn't get the memo. It just kept on generating its reality, projecting the world it expected to see. When Feinberg asked who was in the room, she'd confidently describe friends and family, but the room was totally empty. Her brain was just hallucinating a world completely untethered from reality. So all of this evidence really points to one conclusion. Your reality is a construction. Okay, but how is it built? Well, the secret lies in a really radical shift in how we think about the brain. Seeing it not as a camera that just records the world, but as an engine that is constantly predicting it. Let's break this down because it's super important. Your brain is basically running two processes at the same time. You've got bottom-up processing, that's the raw, kind of glitchy, limited data coming in from your senses. But then, and this is the crucial part, you have top-down processing. This is your brain making predictions based on all of your past experiences, telling your senses what they should be seeing. And get this, most of what you experience is actually top-down. It's the prediction, not the raw data. The placebo effect is the perfect example of this in action. In one brain imaging study, people were given a cream they were told was a powerful new painkiller. Of course, it was just a plain old hand cream. But when they were given a real electric shock, their expectation of no pain was so powerful that it actually sent signals from the front of their brain to shut down the pain centers further back. Their top-down prediction physically changed their perception of reality. And this illusion right here just perfectly illustrates the point. I promise you, there is no white triangle on the screen. There are only some black Pac-Man shapes and some angles. But you see one, don't you? A bright white one. That's because your brain's best prediction for why those shapes are arranged that way is that a triangle is simply covering everything else. So it just creates one for you. And what's incredible is that brain scans show your visual cortex actually lights up as if a real triangle is there. Now let's look at the Necker cube to see what happens when the brain has a problem. When the sensory data is ambiguous, like this simple line drawing, The brain doesn't just give up. It starts actively testing different hypotheses. Is the cube pointing down and to the left? Or, wait, now it's pointing up and to the right. It can't settle on one stable prediction, so your perception just flips back and forth as your brain tests both possibilities. You are literally watching your brain's prediction engine at work in real time. Okay, so we've got a pretty good idea of how the brain constructs our reality. But this leads us to a much deeper, much more profound mystery. Not how the brain processes all this information, but why do we have a subjective inner experience of it at all? The philosopher David Chalmers famously framed this as the hard problem of consciousness. Now, the easy problems, and believe me, they are not easy at all, are about function. How does the brain process sight? How does it control our muscles? We can figure that out. But the hard problem is different. It's about experience. Why does all that information processing feel like something? Why isn't it all just happening in the dark without any inner movie playing for an audience of one? And look, don't mistake this for some fringe philosophical idea. This is one of the most active and intense debates in modern science. A 2020 survey of professional philosophers showed that a clear majority, over 62%, agree the hard problem points to a genuine, unsolved mystery right at the very heart of what it means to be a conscious being. So, how do we even begin to tackle this? While philosophy is grappling with the big why, neuroscience is developing frameworks for the what for. As in, what is the function of this conscious experience we have? And a leading idea is something called the global workspace theory. So here's the thing. A massive amount of what your brain does is totally unconscious and automatic, like breathing or walking. But certain high-level tasks seem to absolutely require consciousness. Things like holding a piece of information in your mind for more than a few seconds, or combining different ideas in a totally new way, or just deciding out of the blue to do something. These things aren't automatic. They require a different kind of processing. The global workspace theory tries to explain this. Forget the complex diagram for a second and just imagine your brain is like a giant company full of brilliant, silent specialists in their own little departments. Consciousness, in this theory, is like the company's big projector screen in the main conference room. When one specialist has a really crucial piece of info, it gets broadcast onto that screen for everyone else to see and use. This broadcast allows for teamwork, for planning, and for coming up with novel solutions, the very things that seem to need consciousness. And this really brings us full circle. This conscious workspace, that's the stage for the storyteller in our heads. It takes the predictions, the sensory data, the memories, and it weaves them all together into a coherent narrative. That inner voice you can hear in your head right now, that narrator, that's the sound of your conscious workspace, creating the ongoing story of you. So in the end, our perception of the world isn't a clear window onto reality. It's a story, told by a predicting brain. Now, this story is constrained by the real world, for sure, but it is ultimately authored by you. Which leaves us with one last big thought. If your reality is a story that your brain is telling itself, what does that mean for your sense of who you are, for the choices you make, and for the life you build from this very moment forward?